Have you ever felt like you're living someone else's life? Not in some dramatic, stolen identity way, but in the quiet, suffocating way where you wake up each morning and put on a version of yourself that feels borrowed. Like you're wearing clothes that don't quite fit, speaking words that don't quite sound like your own voice, making choices that don't quite align with something deeper inside you. Maybe you've noticed it in those moments between sleep and waking, when your defenses are down and you catch a glimpse of someone you used to be. Or perhaps it's in the way you laugh differently with different people, the way you edit your thoughts before speaking them, the way you've become so skilled at reading a room that you've forgotten how to read yourself. You've become fluent in the language of others' expectations, but somewhere along the way, you stopped understanding your own. There's this haunting feeling that the person you've become is not the person you were meant to be. That beneath all the layers of learned behavior, social conditioning, and adaptive strategies, there's someone else entirely. Someone more real, more alive, more you. But they feel so distant now, like a childhood friend you've lost touch with. We're going to explore what Carl Jung understood about this split between who we are and who we think we should be. We're going to look at why you built this false self in the first place, what it's costing you now, and most importantly, how to find your way back to the person you were before the world taught you that being yourself wasn't enough. This isn't about becoming a better version of yourself. This is about discovering that the person you've been searching for has been there all along, waiting beneath the carefully constructed identity you've been living behind. But I need you to know, this isn't a comfortable conversation. This is only for those ready to question everything they think they know about themselves. Are you ready to meet the person you've been hiding from? There's a script running in your head, and you probably don't even know it's there. It's been running for so long that it feels like your own thoughts, your own voice, your own choices. But listen closely to the way you talk to yourself throughout the day. Notice the words you use, the standards you hold yourself to, the way you automatically adjust your personality depending on who you're with. You say things like, "I should be more grateful," instead of, "I feel disappointed." You think, "I need to be stronger," instead of, "I'm overwhelmed." You tell yourself, "I'm fine," when you're anything but fine. You've become so good at translating your authentic feelings into acceptable thoughts that you've forgotten there's a difference between the two. In relationships, you find yourself playing a role: the supportive friend, the reliable partner, the successful professional. You know exactly what each person needs from you, and you deliver it flawlessly. But underneath this performance, there's a growing sense of emptiness, like you're giving away pieces of yourself until there's nothing left for you. You make decisions based on what looks good, rather than what feels right. You choose careers that sound impressive, rather than fulfilling. You maintain relationships that work on paper, but leave you feeling lonely. You've become an expert at living a life that makes sense to everyone else, while making no sense to your own soul. And here's the strangest part. You can't quite remember when this started. When did you begin asking, "What should I do?" instead of, "What do I want to do?" When did you start living for the approval of others, rather than the approval of your own heart? This is what Jung called the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the social world. But you've been wearing it for so long that you've forgotten there's a face underneath. The mask has become your face, and your real face has been waiting in the shadows, growing more unfamiliar with each passing day. Why does this feel so familiar? Because somewhere along the way, you learned that being yourself wasn't safe. If you trace this back to its beginning, you'll find a child who was naturally, authentically themselves. A child who cried when they were sad, laughed when they were happy, and said exactly what they meant. A child who hadn't yet learned that some parts of themselves were acceptable and others were not. But the world around you had opinions about who you should be. Maybe you were told you were too sensitive, too loud, too quiet, too much. Maybe you learned that your anger was unacceptable, your sadness was inconvenient, your joy was embarrassing. Maybe you discovered that love came with conditions, that you were loved for being good, not for being real. So you adapted. You learned to suppress the parts of yourself that didn't fit, to emphasize the parts that got you attention, affection, acceptance. You became skilled at reading the emotional temperature of a room and adjusting yourself accordingly. You learned to be who others needed you to be, because being yourself felt too risky. This wasn't weakness. This was intelligence. This was survival. You were a child trying to navigate a world that seemed to have very specific requirements for love and belonging. Of course you learned to meet those requirements. Of course you learned to be acceptable rather than authentic. But here's what that wise, adaptive child couldn't have known. The strategy that protected you then is now imprisoning you. The false self you built to survive has become a prison you can't escape. The very thing that once kept you safe is now keeping you from living. You didn't choose to become disconnected from yourself. You were taught to be disconnected from yourself. And now, decades later, you're living as a stranger to your own soul, wondering why success feels empty and why love feels conditional, and why you can't shake the feeling that you're missing something essential about your own life. But what if I told you that the person you've been searching for never actually left? What if they've been waiting patiently for you to remember who you were before you learned to be someone else? Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. You are not broken. You are not a problem to be solved or a project to be improved. You are a person who learned to survive by becoming someone else. And now you're ready to come home to yourself. The process he called individuation isn't about adding more to who you are. It's about subtracting everything that isn't actually you. It's about peeling away the layers of conditioning, expectation, and learned behavior to reveal the person who was there all along. Think of it like archaeology. You're not creating a new artifact. You're carefully brushing away the dirt and debris to reveal something ancient and precious that was always there. Your authentic self isn't something you need to become. It's something you need to remember. This means that every impulse you've been suppressing, every feeling you've been editing, every desire you've been judging, these aren't obstacles to overcome. They're breadcrumbs leading you back to who you really are. Your authenticity isn't found in becoming someone new. It's found in returning to someone old. The parts of yourself you've been rejecting, they're not mistakes, they're messengers. Your anger isn't something to manage. It's information about your boundaries. Your sadness isn't something to fix. It's your heart's way of processing loss. Your joy isn't something to contain. It's your soul's natural expression. But here's where most people stop before they reach the real transformation. Because as you start to peel away these layers, as you start to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been rejecting, you're going to encounter something that's been waiting in the darkness. Something you've been running from your entire life. You're going to meet your shadow, and that encounter will change everything. Jung described the shadow as everything you were taught not to be. It's every impulse you learnt to suppress, every emotion you learned to hide, every part of yourself you decided was unacceptable. It's your anger when you were told to be nice. It's your selfishness when you were taught to be giving. It's your wildness when you were expected to be civilized. But here's the profound truth about your shadow. It's not evil. It's not some dark force trying to destroy your life. It's simply the parts of yourself that you've been rejecting, and they've been waiting in the unconscious, growing stronger with each year of neglect. Every time you've sabotaged yourself on the verge of success, every time you've pushed away love when it was offered, every time you've acted in ways that surprised and disappointed you, that was your shadow trying to get your attention. It's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to be integrated back into who you are. Your shadow holds not just your darkness, but your power. All the energy you've spent suppressing parts of yourself, all the life force you've used to maintain your false self, that's where your shadow lives. It's not your enemy, it's your unused potential, the rage you've been swallowing. It's your power to say no, to set boundaries, to protect what matters to you. The selfishness you've been denying. It's your ability to prioritize your own needs, to take up space, to value your own experience, the darkness you've been running from. It's the very thing that gives your light meaning. Jung understood that you can't become whole by rejecting half of yourself. You can't become authentic by only accepting the parts of yourself that are socially acceptable. Real individuation means embracing all of who you are, the light and the shadow, the acceptable and the unacceptable. And if you stop running from your shadow, you won't lose yourself. You'll reclaim yourself. You'll discover that the person you've been trying to become already exists. You've just been too afraid to let them out. So what does this look like in practice? How do you stop living as someone you're not and start living as someone you are? It begins with the radical decision to stop performing yourself, to stop asking, "What should I do?" and start asking, "What do I actually want to do?" To stop trying to be good and start trying to be real, to stop living for the approval of others and start living for the approval of your own soul. This isn't about becoming reckless or selfish. It's about becoming honest. It's about honoring what you actually feel instead of what you think you should feel. It's about making decisions from your center instead of from your conditioning. But here's what nobody tells you about this process. It's not about effort. It's not about trying harder or pushing yourself to change. It's about relaxation. It's about finally giving yourself permission to be who you've always been underneath all the layers of protection. The person you're looking for isn't someone you need to become. They're someone you need to remember. They're not hiding somewhere far away. They're waiting just beneath the surface of your awareness, patient as a seed waiting for spring. You don't have to earn the right to be yourself. You don't have to prove that you're worthy of authenticity. You don't have to become someone else to deserve love. You just have to remember that you were born deserving of love, exactly as you are. The only way out of the prison of your false self isn't more effort. It's more truth, more honesty about who you are, what you want, and what you're actually feeling. More courage to disappoint people by being real than to exhaust yourself by being fake. So if you've been waiting for permission to be yourself, for a sign that it's safe to stop performing, for a way back to who you used to be before the world taught you that you weren't enough, this might be it. As you close this video and return to your life, I want you to carry this truth with you. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are not a stranger to yourself. You're a person who learned to survive by becoming someone else. And now you're ready to come home. The person you've been searching for in every relationship, in every achievement, in every moment of quiet desperation, that person is already here. They've been waiting beneath all the masks, all the conditioning, all the fear. They've been waiting for you to remember that being yourself isn't something you have to earn. It's something you've always deserved. Your authentic self is not a destination you reach after years of work. It's a recognition that happens in a moment. The moment you remember that you were never meant to be anyone other than who you are. And who you are has always been enough. The shadow you've been running from isn't your enemy. It's your wholeness. The parts of yourself you've been rejecting aren't flaws. They're features. The person you've been trying to become already exists. You've just been too afraid to let them breathe. If this spoke to something real in you, something that's been waiting to be acknowledged, consider subscribing. There's more where this came from, and you're not alone in this journey back to yourself. You were born whole, and you remain whole, even now. The fracture was never in you. It was in the world's ability to see you clearly.